Allow me to thank the press for being here at such a short notice. Some of the members of the media knew I was meeting with the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary, and so they've been calling for comments, and I did not want to go through this on five different occasions. So I just thought, why not just have everyone come over so I can give some brief comments to everyone at the same time. So I just concluded the meeting, and the meeting went extremely well. One of the reasons I wanted to do this too, because I could have issued a press release, is because Mr. Norton took the very unusual step of releasing his speaking notes to the media. Normally in these meetings, you tend to discuss several issues, but there is an unwritten protocol that you do not release all the details of the meetings. But I guess Mr. Norton is looking for publicity anywhere he could get it. So he decided to take that unusual step. I did not want many of the issues that he released to be seen as gospel, as though we did not have a position on them. Now, we've been in the public domain on several occasions addressing those matters that he raised with the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary. But I want to do so once again here, lest there be any doubts about our position on these matters. So in the meeting, we discussed, first of all, democracy in Guyana. And I said to the Deputy Assistant Secretary that the People's Progressive Party is committed to working with all of Guyana, all political parties, and the international community in strengthening our democracy. That this is not an alien value, democracy, to the PPP. That we have consistently, from the beginning of the party, fought for and defended democracy. I pointed out the track record of the PNC on this matter. I pointed out that from the period in 1964 to 1992, they stayed in office through rigged elections, and that they did not have, the United States did not have to take my word for it. They can find evidence of this in many reports issued by the successive US governments, CIA reports, State Department reports, Lord Aylesbury report, Caribbean Conference of Churches. There's enough documentary evidence there that would support this contention that the party was essentially undemocratic and rigged elections. And I said to the US Deputy Assistant Secretary that that party had not changed. That the first chance it got at getting back into power, it sought to rig the 2020 elections. I pointed out that until now, they've been unable to find their statements of poll. Although the whole country has these statements of poll, and that had GCOM used the statements of poll that they had in their possession to determine the election results, then they could have spared us the agony of having to go through 5 months of torture and people's lives put on hold in Guyana. As you would recall, Lowenfield was asked by the Chief Justice to present the statements of poll that they had in their possession for safekeeping once the elections petition was filed. And the statements of poll that Lowenfield delivered to the Chief Justice were the same statements of poll that the People's Progressive Party uploaded 2 days after the elections on a website. And those statements of poll showed that the PPP had won the elections. And the same Lowenfield decided to call the elections on the basis of fraudulent tabulation instead of using the statements of poll that he had in his possession, which he recently handed over to the Chief Justice. So I then spoke about the voters list and their claim that the voters list was bloated. That was one of the reasons why they lost the elections. I pointed out that in 2015, that the voters list was about 575,000 registrants you had on the voters list, persons on the voters list. And that 416,000 turned out and voted. So they did not complain at that time that the voters list was bloated because 160,000 or so people did not vote who were on the voters list. In 2020, you had 660,000 persons on the voters list and about 460,000 voted. So not all the people on the voters list voted, and that you had a robust arrangement at the polling places, better than some developed countries in the world, to verify the people who voted, and that everyone, including APNU's agents, they all signed the statements of poll. So to claim today that they lost or somehow impute that they lost because of a bloated voters list is patently false. Secondly, I said that they themselves know that years ago, in the early 2000s, that we changed the system from registration, house-to-house registration, to continuous registration. And that countries that have continuous registration, they tend to have large numbers on their voters list. Take, for example, Barbados or many of the islands. In some of the Caribbean countries, the number of people on the voters list equates to the number of the population, the entire population of the country. It doesn't mean that people gonna vote, but even if they migrate, they remain on the voters list. And I said there is very little we can do because the same APNU sat with the People's Progressive Party in the early 2000s and agreed to a constitutional change, which I signed into law, to remove the residency requirement from registration and voting. Prior to that, in the Constitution of Guyana, it said that to vote at election time, you had to be Guyanese, 18 years and older, and you had to be resident in Guyana. When the Constitution was changed, we jointly removed the residency requirement. And when they sought in 2020 to do the house-to-house registration, to remove people's name, we went to court and the Chief Justice ruled that it would be unconstitutional. So if you're Guyanese and you live any part of the world, the Constitution of Guyana from the early 2000s gives you the right to come home and vote if you wish. once your name is on the voters list. And no political party can remove your name. And we agreed to that, the parties, including APNU, agreed to that. So this whole issue about a bloated voters list is a smokescreen for their attempt to rig the elections. I pointed out that we are going to work with the international community and all the parties, including APNU in the parliament, to strengthen the laws surrounding the conduct of elections, to remove the discretion and the room for capricious behavior by any elected official. And that is why the Representation of People Act has been out in the public domain for several months now. We've received recommendations. We're in the process of looking through those recommendations, redrafting the legislation to be tabled hopefully at the next sitting of the Parliament, and that legislation will be debated there. So that will determine to a large extent, or help to determine, transparency around the conduct of the elections and the tabulation of the results and announcement of the results. So take, for example, polling places cannot be then decided overnight by the CEO of GCOM. They would have to be determined several weeks in advance and publicized so that people will know where they can vote. A manual will have to be developed by the CEO and shared with all of the parties months before the elections, and that manual must be published too. So a situation that took place like on the East Coast, where the RO decided that for 50-something boxes that the presiding officers must not put the documents that they're required to do in the boxes, but deliver them to his office, like Mingo did, that will never happen because it will be part of the manual, how you treat with documents, all election-related documents. So you would not, people can say, I did not know, the presiding officer, I got an instruction the night before, etc. So a lot of these things will be improved. For example, publicizing or publishing all the statements of poll even before the tabulation process starts, so the people of the country will know long before they even tabulate what these election results are. There'll be total transparency. So that's the strengthening I spoke of, that we are willing to work with everyone thereon. Now, the point I saw Mr. Norton in his notes that he released spoke about the formula, the 331 formula, and that it's political. And this 331 formula, there have been a lot of elements in civil society and the international community that said we should move away from it. It was put there after the discussion with the Carter Group and Price, the Prime Minister of Belize, and we had that enshrined in our Constitution. And it has served us well for over a period. The international community and civil society has been urging we go more to a technical body like in the rest of the region. But I pointed out to the Deputy Assistant Secretary that the threat did not come from the political body, the 331. It came from the technical staff of the Secretariat. That is where, in complicity with APNU, they sought to rig the elections. So had we not had the 331 formula, today you would have had an illegal government in office with results declared that had no basis on how people voted. And so we have to be very cautious about these matters. So I pointed out about the track record of the PNC and their lack of commitment to democracy. There were attempts on several occasions to steal the elections. On another matter that Mr. Norton released in his report, he complained to the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary about the Natural Resources Fund. So I pointed out something that I had done already to the people of this country through a press conference when I explained our amendments to the Natural Resources Fund. First of all, the Natural Resources Fund that we amended, that was passed by APNU, was passed in the period after the no confidence motion, when the parliament should have been dissolved and we should have been preparing for elections. That the same so-called civil society that supported it then, they didn't have a word to say, one, on the illegality of that action, unilateral passage of the Natural Resources Fund by an illegitimate government, nor did they have much to say about its provisions, which placed almost all of the powers for management of the fund and use of the fund in the hands, solely in the hands of the executive. They did not say a word. We were the ones in opposition who expressed concerns about several elements of the bill, but particularly about the need for arm's length management of the resources and the need to strengthen transparency surrounding the receipt of funds, etc. Consistent with what we said in opposition, we sought to improve. We could have repealed the entire fund, but we decided to focus at least now on operationalizing the fund through the improvement of 4 critical elements in the fund. The first surrounding the receipt of money from oil and gas companies. In many parts of the world, the population they're in the dark on how much money the government receives as oil and gas revenue. We were hell-bent on changing that. But what was there before, and what brought this matter to the fore with a greater sense of urgency? It was the behavior of the same APNU. You would recall that when they collected the 18 million signing bonus, almost a year after the receipt of the money, Jordan was asked whether they collected it, and he denied it. He said, "We neither requested nor did we receive any money, any signing bonus." We later found out that he had authorized the establishment of a bank account outside of the balance sheet of the central bank that would not be reflected in the balance sheet of the central bank, nor would it have been audited by the Auditor General. And he decided to deposit the 18 million into that account. Now that's contrary to our financial laws. The financial laws of this country say that you can deposit revenue only in 3 areas. The consolidated fund, secondly, a deposit fund created for a special purpose, but the parliament has to be notified within a short time period about its creation, or a fund set up by special legislation. That is like the Lotto Fund, which Parliament sets up. Those are the only 3 places where it's legal to deposit revenue. This account that they set up was not in any of these 3 areas. And we had to file a court case to get them to comply with the Constitution of Guyana and the law. So this issue about transparency surrounding receipt of funds was a very important issue for the PPP. And how did we fix that? By amending the law that they had, that the civil society was happy with. So, or some elements in the civil society, we said that every transaction, big or small, from the oil and gas company, if they deposit $1 in the fund or $100 million, the Minister of Finance within 3 months has to publish in the official gazette that deposit, every single deposit, so not one deposit, but every single deposit, however big or small it is, and notify the Parliament. And if he fails to do so, can go to jail for 10 years. No country that I know of has such a strong provision. No country that I know of has such a strong provision. So every Guyanese at the end of the year can simply add down using the official gazette, and then know how much money we've collected and from whom. So that is surrounding the receipt of funds. Secondly, surrounding the transfer of funds. How do we determine how much money comes from the Natural Resources Fund over to the budget every year? So we were determined to make that transparent too. The illegal or the law that was passed by APNU established a macroeconomic committee that the Minister of Finance's nominee will chair. So he chaired the macroeconomic committee. The macroeconomic committee will make a recommendation to the minister. Then the minister will decide at his sole discretion, based on an assumption-based formula, how much money he wants to come from the Natural Resources Fund over to the budget. He could decide, because it's all assumption-based, he could play around with the figures. As Minister of Finance, former Minister of Finance, if I had a formula like that, I could justify not taking a cent from the fund or taking all from the fund. And nobody would be able to question it, because the assumptions I would use, the economic assumptions about what could be absorbed in the economy without creating change in relative prices, all of that will be at my discretion. We are determined to change that. No one person should do that or have those powers. So now we put in a simple formula. The first 500 million that comes in gets transferred to the Treasury. Second 500 million, a share of that. And so it goes. So what does this effectively do? Every year you know now, in December 31st, any person in this country can take all the gazettes, decide, oh, we collected 700 million this year. So what will come to the budget next year? They apply the formula, and then they say, oh, 600 million of this 700 or 500 million will go to the budget. You don't have to wait on the budget. They know that. That's ultimate democratization of this and transparency. Ultimate, where citizens can do that. Don't have to wait in an obscure office somewhere in the country with a politician deciding how that will happen. That is transparency. The third thing had to do with the use of the money. Now, APNU wants to spend every cent more through, they want to give out all this money. Let's eat it all up one day. And they're gone. We don't even have enough money to give out. We can't afford what they're saying we should give out. We're not collecting so much money that they want to pay out now. So we can't, if we do that, we can't build roads, we can't build hospitals, schools, nothing for the future. But they would have a chance to make that case, because every cent that will be funded from the oil money transferred to the Treasury, every activity has to go to the Parliament and be debated. They have a say in it. They can oppose it, they can support it, They can make suggestions otherwise, but it will be done transparently. So the PPP can't fund an activity or government that is not approved by the parliament. So all the oil money that comes to the treasury will finance only approved activities by the parliament. That's in terms of use, and that's transparent. And people ask, oh, are there penalties for breaching that now? What if someone misuses it? Well, there's serious penalties that are existing for breach of spending. And then the fourth area had to do with management that Norton spoke more of. So Norton did not have a problem when Jordan or their Minister of Finance controlled everything. He controlled the central bank, which is mandated to operate the fund or manage the fund. The central bank had to report to him directly. He will decide where our money was invested. He would have decided in what instruments, what rate of return, all of that. And they didn't have a problem with this. Norton was, the Minister of Finance is a political appointee. So a politician would have determined the investment for the fund, the money in the fund. We decided, when we said in opposition, we wanted a layer between the politician and the management of the fund. So we decided to insert a board of directors. Now, I thought they will be happy with this, the civil society. Everybody would applaud it. Suddenly, they're cussing us now. They were happy with the old system, although they fight for transparency. And they're saying, oh, who appoints the board of directors now? That's why they're gone to. Well, of course, the president has three. We made it clear the president has three nominees there in a direct, and we are going to include someone from the private sector and one from the parliament. But we're not putting politicians or active politicians on any on the board of directors. We will not put active politicians. So you have technical people with some skills there that can oversee the management of the fund, and it's a layer between the Minister of Finance. And the oversight body, they have to report to the parliament too. The report will go to the parliament to be debated. The oversight body had over 22 organizations. We made it operational by putting all the civil society and private sector and professions and all, but it's a smaller body now, but they would report also to the parliament. Now, what we have done there, we fulfill our manifesto promise that we've made the management of the fund more arm's length from the politicians. And so they now said they want somebody on the fund. They want a politician on the fund. They want somebody on the fund. They didn't have a problem. They didn't have a problem with the Minister of Finance. Had we left it like the law they passed, guess who would have been running the fund now? Had we just decided to implement the APNU law, Ashley Singh would have been running the fund. If we just left it alone, and there wouldn't have been any need to publicize how much we receive, and Ashley Singh could have determined every year how much we collect, or the office of the president, because Ashley is now in the office of the president. We could have determined that. We can't do that anymore based on the law we passed. So clearly they can just go and play the victim all the time. But they supported a system that was inherently, and for the management of the oil and gas money, inherently flawed and possibly corrupt. He mentioned about civil society and how the PPP is hostile against civil society. And we made it clear, this is a free country. People are free to express their views, and they have done so under APNU, under the PPP, without fear of intimidation. APNU intimidated people. You people, even people who wouldn't have said a word on the APNU can find their voice now, and that's good. But we are not eunuchs. We're not eunuchs. So defense, if they come and lie about the government, or they take partisan political positions, which they do, we will defend ourselves. We're not eunuchs. We're not going to sit and take anything and just because we want to have a good name that we're not criticizing civil society. Some of these civil society organizations are corrupt. They operate just to collect money from the international community. Some are undemocratic. It's one person organization. One man couldn't get a job in government. He went off, that he discussed with us, he went off and formed an organization that has become one of the most vocal ones. And I'll talk about that some other day if he pushes me a bit too much. But we want to work with civil society. You can't come and lie about it. Oh, we are moving too fast for civil society. We promise the electorate we will move fast to create jobs and try to get the cost of electricity down. How are we going to get it down if we don't build the power plants of the future? Or do some of the things we're doing now and build the highways and the hospitals? How are we going to improve healthcare? We have to do that. We're moving too fast. We must send all of our plans. Although we contested elections and the electorate gave you the mandate based on these plans that you presented to the electorate in the manifesto, we must send it to the McCormack now so he could give the stamp of approval or the policy forum. And what was dishonest about it too, that I saw the dishonesty in that statement, that many of the organizations that he claimed that were part of the policy forum, they didn't even see the statement he released and subsequently distanced themselves from it, using the society for the blind and all of this. These are vultures, praise. So you know the use of the vulture word. Sometimes how unhappy they were when I said it, but it is true. And we got to learn to call a spade in this country. And so we are open to civil society and ideas, people who want to improve things, want to work along with projects. But they seem to us want to block everything that benefit the people of this country. You have a little group who can afford to live because their bread is well buttered. They everything for poor people, and they seem to want to block. It's not going to happen. So we're open to civil society growing. We'll support civil society when it expand. Want this to happen. But we will also, when people try to unfairly damage the image of our country or misrepresent what we do, we will defend ourselves. We spoke a bit about the border too, and the assurances that have been communicated publicly by the Deputy Assistant Secretary, were repeated at the meeting about the U.S. position in relation to our sovereignty, its strong support for our territorial integrity and sovereignty, and the approach we have taken at the ICJ. And we agreed that we will share more meetings so that share more information so that when these meetings take place between the different parties, that is possibly US and Venezuela, we are assured first of all that Guyana did not come up and our sovereignty will not be part of any such discussion, and that we will continue to share more information about what takes place in these discussions in the future. So I'm not going to say much more about that matter, because I think it's enough to say that at this time. I spoke extensively about racism in Guyana and its origins and the need to have some fact-based debates and stuff. And because I think it's time we take this issue on frontally. I think it's time we take it on frontally. And I've started doing that by calling again a spade with issues that we've tiptoed around. Because when you do the assessment of policies and how people have benefited in this country and which government was in place when they benefited, then you would see that PNC has not been good for Guyana, but they've also not been good for Afro-Guyanese. And if you do a proper assessment of our history and a lot of these perfunctory reports that come and try to paint us as, basket case and all of that, we talked a bit about that too. But I was just pointing out that in 1992, when our per capita GDP was close to Haiti, and we didn't have jobs, half of our population had fled. You didn't get power for 2 weeks at a time. The roads were impassable. The hospitals didn't have drugs. Sea defenses were falling apart. We couldn't pay our debts. We didn't have foreign exchange. People had to go and get $20 stamped in their passport when you travel, and all of that stuff in that period. That the whole country suffered, every race and every class. But Afro-Guyanese probably suffered the most because they were mainly in the public sector. And I had to point out about the policies that led to devaluation. When overnight the public service got pauperized under APNU, when they devalued the currency, and in the 90s, especially when we took office, the minimum wage was $25 US. And a lot of people were working close to the minimum wage. $25 US. And they were mainly Afro-Guyanese in the public service. Those on fixed income fared even worse than those who were doing some farming who couldn't find job in the public service. So what really, they didn't give any house lots in that period. That was after 28 years. They didn't give much. After Burnham died, nothing really, APNU didn't focus on housing anymore. Burnham did in the earlier period. And so no house lots, nothing. They didn't even have a housing ministry. The vehicles, I remember going to school and we used to sit by the roadside and we couldn't get vehicle at 10 o'clock in the morning and eat our lunch. So every time a vehicle is coming down the road, you'll hear it and then you fold up your lunch kit and then stand up by the roadside. That is how sparse the number of vehicles traveling on our road was. So we remember those days. That didn't help anyone. And I said, if you go to the 23 years under the PPP, let's look at what changed. People started affording things. More house lots, houses of every race. Vehicles, better paying jobs. Our minimum wage is still pretty low, but it's like probably $300-400 now. Up and a tough trouble and having to pay back all the debts. It's several billions of dollars of debt that we ended up having to pay back of some of the best fundamentals. And then, so that's the 28 years. At the end of it, people were all suffering, we were all. And then the 5 years, they came in, and they didn't do much for anyone, including Afro-Guyanese. No housing, we've gone back to more taxes, took away the children grant, everyone got affected. So we gotta go and deal with this issue in a fact-based, factual manner. And I made the point in Essequibo Coast that they love people in the abstract. and they only love them when they're out of office. And so this is something that we are prepared anytime to have that fact-based debate. And then you will see who's managed for all of Guyana, and it's the PP, because that's the only way this country will move forward. So a lot of these issues we're prepared to tackle. We spoke a bit on climate issues and the oil and gas sector and all of that. And there were some other areas. But I'd stop there because I think I've been going on for a while. And just let you know, I probably wouldn't have taken this unusual step, as I said before, to host this, but he just released his notes. So I don't want people to think that, we don't have an answer to these things. In fact, we've answered these issues 1,000,000 times before. It's just that he ignores the answer, like how it's unconstitutional to remove people's name from the voters list. Somebody should ask him about that. Ask Norton, are you suggesting we break the Constitution? Are you suggesting we go against the ruling of the Chief Justice? Somebody should ask him these tough questions. We don't throw softball at him. Okay, thank you. Let's take questions.
Mr. Jagdeo, I should go ahead and raise yourself. But you're serving the question of registration in light of the ongoing concerns about voting lists and so on. Is your government going to reconsider the residency requirement? And sir, secondly, why in the spirit of One Guyana, the One Guyana Trust, did your government make specific provisions in the NRF law for a representative, not necessarily an active politician, of the opposition to sit on the board, to be part of the whole deliberative process and the way the money is being spent? And if you'll allow me a third question quickly, sir. You are talking so much about transparency in the process for the approval of the funds and so on, but at the end of the day, what do you say to sections of John public, probably including some of your own supporters, who may say, sir, that you have the majority in the House? So regardless of how much objections they may have in the Parliament and the process, that you will use your simple majority to pass the use of any funds from the fund, without even taking on board the best recommendations possibly from the opposition.
So there are several questions you asked. Why didn't we put someone from the opposition on the... A nominee from the opposition on the board? Because we do not want to politicize the work of the board. This is a technical board. Mr. Barrow is there because Mr. Barrow has enormous financial skills. He's not an active politician. And so we needed that, we needed diversity, but not political diversity there. We wanted it to remain at technical level. They will have an advisor, not to every issue. You have 4 other non-political persons, and you have this one person representing opposition. To every meeting, carry opposition politics to the management of the fund. We wanted to avoid that. This is not a political body we're setting up. A technical body. And so the people will know about how much money is in the fund. They will have a report every year going from the technical body through the Minister of Finance to the Parliament to be debated. They'll have a say. But we don't want the politics to be played out between PPP and APNU at the level of the board. So that's one.
Even if it's a technical person? Even if it's a technical nominee coming from the opposition?
Because, so the technical nominees, we believe that a number of people there were political and some have pecuniary interests. A couple of people there that were there are doing work for oil and gas companies. Accounting work, auditing work, they have pecuniary interests. The people we're hoping to select Our people who are not, don't have anything to do with oil and gas company, in fact, don't work for them too, or are not politicians. And you had several politicians, they suggested, and people with pecuniary interests. And I would have thought that they would have been happy about Dunstan Barrow. We didn't supply, we didn't go and put a PPP man down there. So we put in someone who's had enormous experience on the financial side, who was one of their members of parliament in the past. Should have been happy. And compare that to the Jordan managing himself. You have at least 5 persons managing this fund now, or over in a board that manages the fund, and they were pleased with Jordan and this country and the civil society. If we just sat on it and implemented it, they wouldn't have had a fight now. You wouldn't have had a fight because we were implementing what they wanted. So Ashni Singh should have just run the fund. That is the converse. Sometimes in this country, we have to look at the converse. What would have happened? So APNU has a problem with this now. But would they have had a problem if we had just used their legislation to run the fund? That would have given the Minister of Finance all the powers. Would they have had a problem? No, they may not have had a problem. They couldn't have had a problem because they passed it. Of course, they would have had a problem because they are in opposition now. So that is what we have to look at. It's the duplicity, the blatant, slimy duplicity. I can't handle that sort of thing. How can you be credible and argue that? You should be embracing this change. It's not probably perfect, but it's a significant attempt to have a technical group manage and to put in more safeguards. I'm sorry,
the reintroduction of the residency requirement.
Oh, the resident.
And the use of very simple majority, even with the best.
Okay, yeah, sure. So on the use of the majority in the parliament to approve budgets and stuff like that, how do you suggest in any part of the world, you tell me in which country the executive doesn't pass its budget on the basis of a majority or in principle? Where in the world, or any expenditure, and give me one country in the world, and you tell me where we can do it.
No, I wasn't talking about that, sir. I was saying, what do you say to some sections of the public who say that even with your arguments about transparency and openness, that in the end, even with the best arguments against some of your policies or the way you want to spend money, you will say, look, I'm going to pass it nevertheless.
All right. So let us have a couple of agreements. First of all, on the receipt of the funds, that's transparent. It was not on the APNU bill. Now it's transparent. You will know how much money we've collected. Every transaction you will know about. The parliament will know about. The minister can go to jail for that. That's transparent, right? It's open. Everybody knows that. Secondly, the formula. You may not agree with the formula, but at least you know transparently how much will come and how it's calculated. It doesn't rest on the caprices of the minister. You can predict 15 years into the future how much will come. So that's transparent. In terms of that, so we now have financing into the budget. The oil resources comes in as financing. So then it has to be applied to activities approved by the National Assembly. So the government goes with its budget, with a lot of programs. Of course, at the end of the day, if you have to, regardless of the debate, the government will have to pass its programs. That is what it campaigns on. Can you go to the electorate 5 years from now and say, oh, we didn't get to deliver the 25,000 children grant because APNU was, or the 50,000 per child, because APNU thought we couldn't afford it when it was 10,000, so they removed it and they didn't support it there. What are we going to tell people if we don't use? That's why you fight for a majority in countries to implement your program. It's like, I don't understand what's the logic of this. So you're suggesting that we must sit in Parliament and wait, give the veto power to APNU to approve. Look at when we changed the Constitution and we gave the opposition a veto. What happened with the two top posts in the country? The Chancellor and the Chief Justice. We haven't been able to appoint a substantive Chancellor and Chief Justice since that amendment has been passed, because they refused to exercise the agreement. Before that, it was consultation. You can't denude government. Nobody in the world does that to the point where it's ineffective. And that's what they want. But they didn't want that in the Parliament, in the last government. You recall Amnali and the arrogance. We won the elections. Now they are 50%. We are 50% of the voice, as though we didn't have 50% of the voice when we are fighting to prevent all these new taxes from being implemented on water and electricity and removing the children grant. We didn't have the 50% voice. In fact, they won the last election, 2015, by just 4,600 votes. And behave as though they own it. We fought to get a lot of those things blocked. Nothing we're doing now is bringing hardships on people. In fact, we said to them, if you bring measures to help people, we will support you when we're in opposition. When we take measures to support people there, flood relief and other things, even the COVID grant, it's going to be corrupt. I haven't demonstrated one bit of evidence on that. So this is the approach. You have to get your budgets approved. We have made it clear in the manifesto and through the budget itself how we want to spend the money, and philosophically. And so you see the budget as a concrete expression of that philosophy. So our current expenditure grew only by 18-19% in the last budget, but the capital expenditure by 107%. That's building for the future. That's stimulating our plan, getting our plan going, so we can diversify the economy to avoid the Dutch disease, to create jobs in other sectors. And contrast that with the philosophy of APNU, where in the 5 years they've been in office, in every one of those 5 years, they've spent less on capital expenditure than we budgeted in 2014. Imagine 5 years, less. So the capital budget shrunk in the 5 years. And then the recurrent budget, where they were busy renting buildings and dietary in government, etc. How much did that grow by? 77%. That's consumption based. You eat up every cent that you earn. You don't prepare for the future. They borrowed 100 billion from the central bank. So this is, our philosophy is clear, our economic philosophy. We speak of it. We said we want to spend our money on infrastructure, on health, on education. The budget goes with a series of programs and policies to do just that. If they're not happy with that and they want to distribute every cent, and by the time we finish in 2 years, in fact, we just have to borrow to do what they just suggested. The oil money would not be enough to even do that. We have to borrow. We can't go that route. So we're not gonna, just for the public show of getting APNU or that we're consulting, take this country down that path that would lead to back to the past, right back to the past, where we are poor and living above our means and we racked up there. So that's one. And then on the residency requirement, no. Because we sat together, the people of this country wanted that. That came out of a consultative process that we held across the country. The consultations before we pursue constitutional change in the early 2000s, we established a committee that included 5 from government, 5 from the opposition, and 10 from civil society. They had hearings, they listened to people on the ground, they traveled throughout the regions. People said, we want that change. The parties then got together in parliament and changed it, consistent with the desire of people, the desires of our people. You think the PAP and PNC can unilaterally just do that for convenience? In fact, once we acted out of convenience, and we suffered because of the duplicity of the PNC. When we decided to use the ID card for election for voting purposes. And you recall they said Claudette Singh, he told the people that Claudette Singh is pro-PPP. That's in his notes too. I saw it reported somewhere that Norton told the Deputy Assistant Secretary that Claudette Singh is pro-PPP. Well, Claudette Singh was the judge at that time. When APNU agreed with us, we held the elections using ID card, and then they filed a case just after the elections when we won, and went to the court and said we acted unconstitutionally. ID cards are not needed to vote. And it was Justice Claudette Singh who shortened our term by 2 years. People don't remember that. We had a 3-year term then. We had to go to elections early because of that ruling. So I don't trust them. We're not tying no bundle with them. The people of this country have to decide through the public consultations. Untrustworthy. We've done that. You know, we agreed one time to share power at the city council. So we said, let's agree we're going to work together at the city level. And we're going to rotate the mayorship. APNU said we're taking the first turn. When our turn came, APNU said, forget this. You can't get your turn. Philomena Sahai was supposed to take over. We're not born yesterday, and we're not going to be Jew. We genuinely want to work with the opposition, but it got to be on the basis of some principles and long-term commitment. So let me get the others, Dennis, and then come back to you. I give you 3.
A point there, though.
Okay, all right.
Did the issue of executive power should come up in the talks?
No, never came. In fact, on that USAID report, when Mr. White was here, I spoke with him, Clinton White, and I pointed out to the many, many inaccuracies in the report. The US can conclude anything they wish. But we found out later the report was written by 2 Guyanese, and a 3rd Guyanese was the person organizing the meeting, and reviewed by USAID. And there's a disclaimer. When I look at it carefully, because I didn't look at the report after it came into the public domain and I knew it was here, scanned it. So I saw it was written by these Guyanese and reviewed by the USAID, but there's a disclaimer right up at the front of the report. So there are so many inaccuracies. For example, the report says the PPP is an Indo-Guyanese party, but APNU mainly gets its support from Afro-Guyanese. So that means we're only Indians. 1/3 of our delegates to our Congress were Amerindians in the Essequibo Coast. But we're an Indo-Guyanese party, but the other APNU is mainly Afro-Guyanese. So little things like that, all the stereotypes. This report was supposed to review 2016 to 2020. It only focused on the period when we took office. It didn't speak about the taxes. It didn't speak about the discrimination, laying off sugar workers, a whole range of stuff. It just focused on that little period. But it was a review from 2016 to 2020. So we agreed that we will go paragraph by paragraph and write a view of the report. We never had a chance to comment on the report, so we'll do so now and send it up on the report. But and I had to point out how far a lot of people talk nonsense about winner takes all and stuff, and the model, the Westminster model. And I had to point out how far we have departed from that through the constitutional changes of the early 2000s. That most constitutions in this hemisphere and in the world don't have the inclusive features that we have, 5 Rights Commission, with powers of sanction over the executive. To sit on these commissions, you have to have 2/3 support of the National Assembly. Procurement Commission, the 4 standing committees, the Parliamentary Management Committee, the enhanced powers for the service commissions, the 4 service commissions. All of these are new features that were not in the Constitution before, that we put in place to promote inclusivity at the legislative level. People don't even remember that. Some people want constitutional reform because Granger appointed unilaterally the chairman of GCOM. For 25 years that was clear. Both parties accepted this. We lived with it. He came along, he changed it. That's illegal behavior. You don't need to change the Constitution. You need to throw people in jail for that sort of thing. Not constitutional change. And the same thing happened with no confidence motion. Wasn't it clear that 3 months after the government falls, you have to hold elections? It's clear. So, yes. Anyone?
Sir, just a clarification. For the 331 formula, you're saying that your government will continue supporting it in that it is probably the saving grace.
It was the saving grace in the last election. Now, we're open. So, if you look at our manifesto, there are 2 promises we made. One, we spoke about the governance model and the model at GCOM, that we need to have national discussions and consultations on these. And we will have the discussions. But in the final decision, because the people of the country will have a chance to weigh in, we will be very conscious of the 2020 period about what happened at the technical level. So any amendment to that formula will have to be replaced with some solid safeguards that ensure that elections can be rigged by capricious action or illegal action on the part of the technical people. So we still have an open mind, but that is not going to happen by us sitting down with APNU and deciding on this. We did that one. That's why I used that example once before, and because of their untrustworthy nature, we then turn around and challenge it, and we lost 2 years of our term.
If I can have another question, a bit. You recently spoke in a secret about the need for us to acquire the resource first and for us to build a resilient economy. In referencing what we want to avoid, you said Trinidad is falling apart.
No.
Trinidad seems to be up in arms about this statement, and I was told there was even a discussion on the radio this morning saying that one of the problems with Trinidad's economy is that they have too many immigrants, including the many Guyanese that are over here. Are you concerned about how Guyanese will be treated in the aftermath of?
Sure. Well, I've had a lot of calls from Trinidadians too who said, we agree with you. I've tracked what's going on in Trinidad and Tobago for quite a while, and what I've said before there is not anything new. Every day it's being said in Trinidad and Tobago itself by people, common people, as well as people in every circle. The groups that come here on the private sector, they say this all the time. Now the fact is that Trinidad, and this is indisputable, that its economy is heavily reliant on one sector, oil and gas sector. That's a fact. I've had discussions with several leaders there about a post-oil and gas economy. So this has nothing to do with just Rowley. This is the fact of the economy in Trinidad and Tobago over a long period, growing to rely only on one sector. There is a theory that that shouldn't happen. Theoretically, the danger has been pointed out, and it's called the Dutch disease. And practically, it has consequences for your country too, and we've seen it happen in Trinidad and Tobago. I recall reading one of their budgets, an earlier budget, not the 2022 budget, where in 1 year they lost 80% of their revenue because of the change in oil and gas prices and the fall in production. To organize a budget when you have such a big economic shock, it is difficult. Things will fall apart, whether you like it or not. And so, I said we are determined in Guyana to avoid going down that path, which has happened not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but in many countries of the world, where because they did precisely what APNU is trying to get us to do, they ended up with those consequences. Now, is it a fact that people are losing jobs? If you look at the newspapers in Trinidad and Tobago, every day you will see them saying, yes, the currency problems, they have currency shortages, and is it a fact that they've had a long period of low growth? Yes, COVID has exacerbated it, but even before COVID, it is a fact. So what I'm saying is not anything new. What I've sat and listened to the worst things, or the most disparaging things said about Guyana and Guyanese coming from leadership in Trinidad and Tobago over the years, over many years. They talk about the fact that we're undemocratic, and if they're not careful, they'll go the Guyana route. And I didn't raise an issue because it's true. Many of the things they spoke about, that our democracy was challenged. So I don't know if they have a problem with truth. The economy in Trinidad is undiversified. It relies heavily on oil and gas. I spoke about when the prices fall, things start to fall apart. And they're facing some of those consequences now. So the fact that our people, I've said also on Essequibo Coast, that when many of our people fled to different parts of the world to escape hardships here, and we're grateful to those countries who accommodated them and treated them well. Many countries, they fled to Suriname, Venezuela, the rest of the Caribbean, the US. And that's why I said we have an obligation to treat migrants into Guyana, particularly from Venezuela, with decency, because they're fleeing hardship. They're not being trafficked through our country, but they're fleeing hardship. So we are extremely grateful for that. But lots of things have happened to Guyanese too, in the airports there. I've spoken, if people underestimate how strongly and how widespread this concern is among Guyanese. You just mentioned which is the worst airport where people are treated badly, or where they're treated worse in the world. And you will see, the answer will be a resounding Trinidad and Tobago. From all Guyanese, you talk, this cuts across everybody. We're not unmindful of that. Many times I spoke to the leadership over there about that. So we know about the hardships our people face too. And one thing will happen, we will not be bullied. Many people believe they can bully us now into removing the local content that we've set aside for our people to improve on. And Guyanese to now benefit from this. Trinidad and Tobago had a local content policy too. It's hard for many of our businessmen to go there and establish business. They have a hard time accessing land and anything else. And somehow people believe that suddenly these resources, we have a treaty obligations, and we are a member of CARICOM, and we want to be a member of CARICOM. CARICOM is a valuable part of our family. So we will uphold our treaty obligations. But somehow they believe they have a God-given right to displace Guyanese too in our own country from our own resources. And we're not going to stand by the PVP. I see APNU saying, oh, we must respect this and that. We're not going to stand by and allow that to happen. We're not going to. Regardless of how, I don't care who cusses me there and what they cuss me for. But I know our job, we're not going to discriminate against Trinidadians. We want Trinidadians, their business to come here. They can come here in partnership with our people. We're grateful for the support they've given to our people. You have a lot of skills, capital here. They're welcome here. The people are welcome. But they have to come in partnership with our people, and our people must not be treated, sometimes in our own country, in some businesses here, as second-class citizens, in our country, in our own country. When businesses are owned here, attitude has to change in relation to Guyanese. We suffered a long time the indignity of this judgment of our people. And so what I said here is something everyone would say and should acknowledge.
Can I just clarify?
Yeah, sure.
I read an article stating that Trinidad's Minister of Foreign Affairs communicated with our Minister of Foreign Affairs on the issue, and
I don't know. Todd didn't raise it with me, so I don't know what he said there, but he said they're trying to clarify. Well, I've clarified. I'm trying to clarify it, so I've clarified it, and it will trigger another debate there. It sounds arrogant, but I don't lose much sleep once Guyanese are moving forward. It's not like hostile or xenophobic, but once our people's interests are protected,
and you're not worried that your people's interest in Trinidad will be...
No, in fact, a lot are coming back. One young lady on Old Year's night, I met her. She's been living in Trinidad and Tobago. I shouldn't get into all these things. It looks like I have grievances, but she's married to a Trinidadian and she has 2 kids. And waiting 11 years now to get her documents. And so she just said, I'm done with it, I pack up, I'm coming home, setting up a business here. So he's going to come here now to live with her because I benefit from the local content policy. So she's coming home. That sort of thing, we need people too, but as I said before, I'm extremely grateful for those who have treated our people well. And I hope God would punish those who didn't treat our people well when they migrated to other countries to look for a better job. But for those who treated our people well, I thank them.
Thank you, sir.
Krishani Rangver from the Newsroom. 2 questions, sir. My first is, you spoke about the recommendations for the representation of the People's Act. I just wanted to know, were any recommendations received from the opposition, that's including the joiner list? And if yes, what were those, and were they taken into consideration? And secondly, just to follow up on the Trinidadian issue, you spoke about the economic situation there. Guyana seems to be deepening relations with a lot of CARICOM states. Is Guyana at this point in time perhaps considering deepening relations with Trinidad, perhaps on the level of oil and gas or even agriculture?
Yes, we're open to working with all CARICOM countries. It must be an equitable sort of relationship that the countries benefit from, both countries. Trinidad and Tobago is valuable in that sense. As I said before, they have capital, they have expertise, and we can benefit from that. But people have to understand we're on equal footing, not in a subservient way or in a subsidiary way. That our business would have to benefit too. And so that is what we're looking forward to, genuine working together. You know we are we're very, very supportive of CARICOM. Me and Muggley came here, we have expanded the relationship. The Minister of Agriculture went there already. We're looking at 1,000 heads breeding animal, the black belly sheep. We have secured 1,000. We're bringing these in to give our farmers along the coast and in other areas so we can start that industry going. A ton of things. So we are looking forward to working with everyone, including Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm not going to bash people and the business and everything else. We're looking forward to that. And the representation of the black. We've had a number of comments from different persons. So what has happened, I've asked Gail to share to put all of these in a matrix. So we're going clause by clause. So we've just sent that to the AG chambers, and we have to have the policy discussion to see which of the amendments are useful that would enhance transparency, accountability on the part of GCOM. And trust me, if they will do that and they don't confer an advantage to any political party, we're open to inclusion on the final draft. So we're going through that process now. Yes, is there anything else? All right. Thank you very much. I know it's a Friday afternoon. Marcel, wanna go? Relax, Dennis. Marcel already closed the press conference. Thank you very much. Thank you.